Wrestling fans have just one question on their minds. As we enter the summer of 96 and now the NWO exists, what was Vince going to do about this when wrestling turned trick in 96? Boy, that is a deep goddamn cut, isn't it? I'm John Redden with my real honest thoughts on the good, the bad, and the Vince Part 4. I apologize for this installment being delayed. A mixture of life, work, and just sometimes needing a little bit of a break. Time has gotten away from me because time is sort of on my side. Yes, it is. Time wasn't on Vince's side. No, it wasn't. Ha ha ha. I'm losing so many people, pal. God damn, this is not good shit. Ha ha ha. But anyway, thank you very much for the feedback on the first 3 parts. So, speaking of part 3, I left it off when the NWO was formed, and Hogan told us all how he felt back in 96 when he said, if it wasn't for Hulk Hogan, you people wouldn't be here. So let's backtrack a little bit in 96, because this is why it was an important year for good and bad in WWE. They didn't lose money like they did in 95. We lost $6 million out of my ass, pal. Fuck! Ha ha ha! Take the water coolers out, pay all the non-wrestling people more, and cut all the other agents' salaries. And then J.J. Dilla and others left. Jeez, good job, Vince. You fucking idiot. But anyway, nevertheless, talked about that in other installments. With 96, look at WrestleMania 12. Now, it did pretty well. Bret and Shawn had their Iron Man match. Bret went away. Shawn was the champion. Okay, so you got that. Well, Bret left. Vince felt he needed another legend, so he decided to make peace with the Ultimate Warrior. Now, I'm going to be as, even, keeled as I can be, because I don't really respect the Warrior, but I understand what Vince was thinking. Now, had the Warrior style evolved, had he actually been able to do, better and get better and want to work better with people and want to work, then, but let's be objective, it could have worked. Nostalgia, you can tap into that. That's what WCW was doing, even though they were kind of putting a new shine on some legends. Still, nostalgia works. The problem is Warrior fucking flamed out in the whole Destrucity thing and his the comic stuff and him, the Warrior University and all that shit. It didn't fucking work, and he flamed out and he cracked, and then he no-showed. Basically saying he no-showed over that, but then tried to use his dad as an excuse, and all this stuff. And it's been told on other deals, but the whole point is Warrior didn't want to play ball. Vince realized he made a bad deal. Warrior was out the door within weeks. He was gone. Vince brought Sid in, and because Sid had bounced around, because softball, and Sid looked like $1 million. At least you could work with Sid. Sid could work to an extent. He wasn't the best, but he was an intimidating son of a bitch, as Dusty Rhodes said. And other people say, because what other human being looked like that? He fucking looked massive. Amazing. Anyway, so Sid's here. Shawn's the champion. We do the curtain call. Talked about that. Hall and Nash can't be punished. 1, 2, 3, K Sean Waltman, now 6 in WCW. They all go. 6 shows up a little bit later after he gets out of rehab. And good on him for getting clean. That's tremendous. Shawn's the champion. Triple H gets punished. And I said this on the DX biography review. But they were like, oh, he got punished, he got beaten, and all this stuff. It was 5 months. Tops. Bell to bell, it was like 5 fucking months. From the curtain call to when he won the Intercontinental Championship from Mark Merrow. I'm not saying that he didn't get punished and he lost out on the King of the Ring 96 win, which we got Austin 316. It worked out for Triple H. He's doing all right for himself despite the health issues, and I hope those health issues do not cause him any other stress. I hope they're taken care of. But it worked out for Triple H. And again, he was the Intercontinental Champion within 5 months of the fucking Furton call. The Furton call! The curtain fall! He's falling on the curtain! Oh no, it's like Lex Luger when he stumbled and, stumbled over the goddamn curtain. Apparently, according to, I believe, Kevin Nash, when he said that Scott Hall saw him. It's like, anybody else seen this? Because that curtain was too tight, Billy. Nobody gets that. Anybody that gets that Lex Luger reference, I'm fucking amazed. But the whole point is, Luger, he was in WCW by this point. Curtain call happened, all that. Shawn's the champion. Triple H gets punished. King of the Ring's out. Austin 316 does all this. So that's trending in the right direction. Unfortunately, we have the NWO forming. And, we have Hall and Nash show up on the other side. Hogan tells people to stick it. Greatest heel turn of all time. Fight me on that. The amount of trash, the amount of hate, it was unbelievable. I remember watching that pay-per-view at a friend's house. It was fucking incredible. They started just pummeling WWE into the dirt. Now, they were already beating them for a few weeks. The last time WWE won a ratings victory until April of 98 was the June 10th, 1996 edition of Raw, which, coincidentally, was right when Nash showed up. And then Great American Bash and all that stuff and yada yada. WCW's cooking. Sure, they would flame out. They would do some stuff that would help them, but then it would end up hindering them and helping WWE because they didn't know how to program this shit and also the corporate merger and all that stuff and whatever, and the domino effect. And the mistakes they made not wanting to push newer talent as high as they should have been before it was too late. Booker T should have been in main event in 98, and he wasn't. But another story for another day. Vince, meanwhile, he's struggling because the Beware of Dog pay-per-view got delayed because of a thunderstorm, so they had to rerun it. And Shawn and Davey worked their program there, and then at King of the Ring 96, which was a tremendous series of matches because Shawn and Davey could work really well together. Of course, you have One Night Only 97, where Bulldog was told he would win, and his sister with cancer was right there. More on that later. Calm. Shawn's the champion. Shawn's not drawing that well. Women are excited. It's not the worst, but the boyhood dream thing, you took away the edge of Shawn Michaels. You made him all white, the term white meat and everything. You made him all cookie cutter. He was also cracking because he was on pills and a whole bunch of stuff, and he talked about that. Vader, he's getting featured. And he beats Shawn in that 6-man tag, I believe it International Incident, if I recall correctly. I know I reviewed that pay-per-view before they were called Premium Live Events, but then they build to SummerSlam 96. Meanwhile, Bret is totally off the grid. He did the Lonesome Dove thing. I actually remember intentionally focusing on that show because I love Bret Hart, my favorite wrestler of all time. I got to get more of his shirts. The whole point is I love Bret. And I watched that show. He didn't have that big of a role. I was disappointed. I was like, what the fuck? You have Bret Hart. You don't understand Hollywood at the time. Still don't understand Hollywood. But Bret had his role, and he didn't shut his mouth because he had to speak, and also The Rock wasn't around to say that yet. Bret was doing well. Also resting his body. And then he had, it was in South Africa against Austin, and I think it was early September 96. And that was his last match on his contract. A lot of people forget that. That was on his unreleased DVD or something like that. And then WCW made overtures towards him. Vince McMahon made this deal and said, okay, Bret, 20-year contract. I'm going to give you millions. Well, it's not going to be 9 million. 10.5 over 20 years. But we're going to pay you this. Retire. You'll be an ambassador. And I'll take care of you. I promise. Pinky swear. Ha ha ha. And then he went back on it later. And more on that in a bit. Bret makes a deal. He comes back not a moment too soon because as all this is going on in WCW, the NWO, the fake Sting, the NWO Sting, Sting becoming the Crow Sting, Scott Hall coming up with that idea. All this stuff's going on, and Shawn's cracking, not doing well as champion. He's putting on great goddamn matches. I match with Mankind at In Your House, Mind Games. He was putting on great matches, but he was cracking. And then, of course, SummerSlam 96, he doesn't want to put over Vader. Why would you want to put over somebody that goddamn dominant? Nope, let's not do that. Sure, Vader was on the downside of his physical prime because of his hard style. Came back from shoulder surgery way too soon. But let's treat him like a goddamn dick. Let's act like an asshole. Tell him, move, all that kind of stuff. Because Shawn was a fucking prick and didn't want to improvise on this stuff. Now, yes, he didn't injure himself there. More on that in 97. But Vince is pushing him, doing all this stuff. And he's got to be just wanting to pull his fucking hair out or, pull his hairpiece off because there will be hell to pay when people make that joke. But Shawn doesn't put over Vader. And Vader was supposed to possibly win a Survivor Series. Cornette said this on his podcast. and then lose back at the Rumble. And then they were going to build back to Shawn and Bret at WrestleMania 13. Shawn loses it to Sid. Bret beats Austin in a tear down the house match. And then fights Sid at In Your House. I forget what the name of the December 96 one. I forgot what it was called. Whole point is Shawn, he would then have the comeback and beat Sid at the 97 Rumble. And of course, in the 97 Rumble in the Alamo Dome, they had to basically make the tickets as cheap as possible just to fill it. Like, oh, it's so great. Yeah, you probably took a fucking bath on that. Because even though, yes, it's a big stadium, and yes, you filled it, they were doing $5, $10 tickets. Now, yes, in a stadium, you might want to charge cheap tickets. If you're all the way up there and you're like, hey, can you hear me? Me. And why they're up in the ceiling, I don't have any idea. I don't know why they're walking on the ceiling. That's Lionel Richie's space. Anybody that gets that reference, I fucking love you. But, meanwhile, Bret should win the Rumble, but Austin got tossed out, but the refs didn't see it. So Austin won. But then, Shawn loses his smile. Yes, he had a knee injury. I'm sure it probably hurt quite a bit. He did it to get out of dropping the title to Bret. Because Bret put him over. Shawn couldn't do the honors there. So that threw everything into fucking chaos. So Vince, again, is probably pulling his goddamn hair out. Even with the mistakes WCW's making, maybe a little bit too much oversaturation of the NWO, they're still pummeling WWE into the fucking dirt. Then, you have just before, I think it was just before WrestleMania 13, WrestleMania 13, they do the ECW stuff to promote Barely Legal, their pay-per-view, by the way. Not to promote Barely Legal women. I mean, you know what? I'm just going to forget about that because I don't really think there's any way to get out of it. Though I wouldn't have put it past Vince, given what he did to the illegal paralegal. Now, ECW stuff, that helps. WWE was starting to turn the corner already because Austin, they did the Pillman's Got a Gun thing. Bret was being a little more snide, would go heel. And we were getting a little more attitude because Vince McMahon decided, hey, we need to listen to this guy, Vince Russo. There's maybe 3 good ideas out of 1,000, but we can reshape some of the bad ones into something somewhat presentable. Fuck Vince Russo, by the way. I don't know why anybody would. I don't know how he has kids. Those poor goddamn beleaguered children. But Vince McMahon lost his mind, brought Vince Russo onto the creative team sometime in 97. Now, ECW stuff helps build a little bit of support because it shows he's willing to work with other promotions. Now, he worked with the USWA or Memphis or, CWA? Yeah, USWA, CWA. He worked with them and actually got to be a heel there because he was the big shot from New York. We had that. Grew up in North Carolina, but nevertheless, the ECW stuff helped. It helped ECW get a buzz, which they desperately fucking needed after the mass transit incident. Vince McMahon would then apparently struck a deal with Paul sometime in 96. Let's implement some more people. I'll send you people. You send me people. Let's work together. Shawn loses his smile. We go to Mania 13. Lowest buy rate ever for a Mania. Up to that point, at least. And because you still got people traditionally buying it instead of buying it or watching on the network or the cock. And yeah, Mania 13 didn't work because Sid versus Undertaker, it seemed like a good idea on paper, but Vince decided to basically go back to having the big guys. Now, all this stuff's going on. This is 97. 96 was pretty successful. 97, even though they did well on pay-per-view, it was a low buy rate. It did well as far as the live gate, and they probably made some money, but it was low compared to what Mania 12 even was. Now, the one thing about WCW, this is the one thing that I want to make a point of, and then we'll get into 97 a little bit more in 98. People act like, WWE didn't have the cash flow. They had cash flow, and they would get more cash flow in a little bit. Sure, Ted Turner had the deeper pockets. And then the corporate merger would come along, and that would wipe all that shit out because Ted Turner didn't have the control. WCW's pay-per-views, from the time Jim Crockett had it, and they only had a couple pay-per-views. They usually did them on closed circuit. I think Survivor Series, no, not Survivor Series, Starrcade 97, Bunkhouse Stampede, Great American Bash 88 were all under the Crockett banner, and the money went to Turner Home Entertainment. That same thing carried over. So, WCW could have huge gates. They get, what was it, Great American Bash 89. Pretty damn big gate. $100,000. Big money. Drew well. Flair and Funk. Pay-per-view buys, I don't know how they did. And all through that. Pay-per-views that did well, pay-per-views that didn't do well. They all went to Turner Home Entertainment. Wrestlers they would get a guarantee. They might get a little bonus if it was like Hogan, Piper, Flair, the big guy, the big towns. Hall Nash, Brett eventually. But Turner Home Entertainment was taking the pay-per-view revenue. And WCW might get a few pennies. So while they are drawing these big gates, and they're Starrcade 97, their biggest pay-per-view. Starrcade 96, pretty big. And other pay-per-views that were doing pretty well. They're all going to Turner fucking Home Entertainment. So WCW isn't making nearly the amount of money. They're just putting money in certain areas to look like they're more profitable. Now, WCW obviously was doing very well with Nitro. They were doing well in the live events. And they were drawing on the pay-per-views. But because of how it was structured and the big money that was being paid out to the, the contracted talents, especially Hall, Nash, Hogan, Savage. I imagine, even though Savage came with Slim Jim, by 97, that, even though I think it was like $750,000 a year, 700, I think it was $750,000 a year. So that would pay for a bulk of Savage's contract. But don't tell me the Savage wasn't getting like $1.5 million from that company. He had to have been. So even if Slim Jim covered some of it, the whole point, WCW didn't have the biggest foundation in pay-per-view, even at their hottest. Starrcade 97 did tremendous business. A lot of fucking buys. I think their biggest buys or their third biggest buys by the time we got done with 98. Now, WWE, for all its faults, for all the issues, for all the cartoonish stuff, for all that, still had a big foundation in pay-per-view because Vince got in early. Yes, you had the closed circuit stuff. I believe Mania 4 was on pay-per-view. It was 4 or 5. I think 4. Because 3 was still on closed circuit. They were making big strides. So even when they, would say the live gate was here and there, if they got that pay-per-view money, and even a low buy rate like Mania 13, they would turn enough of a profit to where Vince would be like, okay, we didn't make as much as I thought. God damn it, ha ha ha. But we're going to do better. This is proof that even though Vince could have relied on Shawn, in the ring, he couldn't rely on him backstage. Taker's a champion. You have stability. Interest went up. The ratings were ticking up a little bit. You had Brian Pillman that was doing his thing, who unfortunately had the bad ankle, was very limited in the ring. God, I wish he had just done commentary. You could argue if Brian Pillman had never, more on Brian Pillman than me, you could argue if Brian Pillman never got, in that accident, that he probably would have wrestled, a number of years. I hate to say it, but even if he hadn't gotten in that accident, I don't think he would have lived past 40 because he was on a destructive path. Rest in peace, Brian Pillman, obviously. But Taker's the champion from Mania 13 to SummerSlam. Austin's rising up. That Austin-Brett match at Mania 13, fucking incredible. Great goddamn match. One of my favorite matches of all time in WWE. Just great, that fucking atmosphere. Brett's a heel. We do the Canadian Stampede pay-per-view, which was very, very good. The In Your House. A 10-man tag where you can literally hear the floor fucking shaking. Those fans would have burned everything and everyone, including themselves, if the Hart Foundation didn't win. But then we go SummerSlam 97, which has issues. Pay-per-view hasn't aged all that well. We had Brett versus Taker in the tear down the house main event. Owen accidentally spiking Austin. And Mankind versus Triple H in a steel cage match in the opener. So all this time this stuff's going on. Vince is starting to realize, okay, he needs to listen to his talent more. He needs to let them be a little more contemporary, be themselves, And then we get to Taker and Shawn having their feud. Hell in a Cell match, Bad Blood 97. This is another one of Vince's controversies. Brian Pillman dies the morning of the pay-per-view. He was supposed to face Goldust. Was it Goldust or Mankind? I'm trying to remember. I'm sorry, it's been 25 years. But I know he was supposed to face somebody. And Cornette even said this on the Dark Side of the Ring, you know, like, go get Bruce. Oh, no, Bruce is dead. Brian is dead. Go get Bruce. He passed away. They did the tribute the next night. And this, one, fuck Melanie Pillman for what she did to her kids. But on this night, not even, the body wasn't even in the fucking ground and Vince has the goddamn widow out there. Has Melanie Pillman, what are you going to do to support your kids? Gee, Vince, maybe you could have cut her a fucking check, you fucking goddamn ungrateful bastard. Oh, right, you don't care about how women, you know, the women that have anything to do with wrestlers, how they do, because you fucking covered up Jimmy Snuka's goddamn murder. You fucking This is the kind of shit that just pisses me the fuck off. Just pisses me off. Yeah, Melanie Pillman was a fucking piece of shit. Eventually. Did a whole lot of dumb shit and admitted it as much in the Dark Side of the Ring. But on this fucking night, come on. Let me babyface myself and let me do this. This is where the fans were really starting to turn against Vince. And it was fucking revolting. Rest in peace, Brian Pillman. 35 years old, way too soon. Okay. With that. And then the stuff with Bret. Montreal Screwjob. I've covered it in so many videos. All I'm going to say is that I side with Bret. I understand why Vince did what he did. But maybe Vince should have gotten the fucking title off of Bret before he said, oh yeah, go WCW. And even though he had a no-compete clause for a bit, he could be in the ring, but he couldn't be in a match. He could be a referee, he could do this stuff or whatever, but he couldn't wrestle. And also, when Bret justifiably punched Vince and hit him with a beautiful uppercut, he broke his knuckles, so he couldn't work for a bit. Okay. Bret screwed Bret. Mr. McMahon is born. One of the greatest heel characters of all time. WCW, meanwhile, has been building the Sting versus Hogan feud that was interrupted when Lex Luger beat Hogan for the championship for 5 fucking days, which was a cool moment, don't get me fucking wrong. Huge goddamn. They're standing in Detroit before Sting! Sorry, I had to do the Shivani Paul Bearer mashup. But, whole point. They had Starrcade 1997. The Montreal Screwjob was a number of weeks before that. That was on a Sunday. The next Nitro was live. Yes, Bret punched out Vince. Bischoff should have been on the fucking horn saying, I'm sorry that happened, Bret. What will it take for you to come down here, go on get on a live Nitro, cut a promo, you say whatever you want. Foot on the throat, press down. That's it. Game over. Bret would have killed WWE in the fucking ratings. Yeah, he wanted to stay there. He's said as much in interviews. But if you're paying him $2.65 million, $3 million, whatever it is, whatever the numbers are, a lot of money. And he was worth every fucking goddamn nickel, and they failed to do anything with him. You had WWE dead to rights there. Yes, the corporate merger, that kind of stuff. That was going to end up happening. But you could have pressed down and crushed Vince. Or at least really, really damaged him and set him back for a year. Because 10 million people would have tuned into that. They would have said, oh, shit, Bret's on Nitro? Click. 2 million people might have watched WWE out of habit or might have taped it. And everybody would have been watching a live Nitro. It would have been fucking amazing. And I did a 3-part series on Bret Hart and WCW a couple years ago. You can check it out if you'd like. But God damn it. Let's pay him $9 million over 3 years and then not fucking use him. Vince does the Bret screw Bret thing. He's still trying to be the face, but he's off of commentary. And he'd been the commentator for a fucking while. From basically 69 nice to that point. So, quite a while. Quite a fucking while. And then we get the Tyson Austin. We get that. And that's fusing with the Vince Austin storyline. Which started, if we're being perfectly honest, on the same night in Madison Square Garden where Goldberg started his streak, even though he lost the house show match. But let's forget about that, or dark matches. So the whole point is, on that same night, on the same night where the Three Faces of Foley happened. And Cactus Jack debuts. And everybody knew who Cactus Jack was in Madison Square Garden. Kevin Dunn, you fucking Bucky Beavertooth motherfucker. I wish somebody would just hurl him down a flight of stairs. Make it like Psycho. That'd be fitting. Granted, if you tried to, knock his teeth out, you need a fucking sledgehammer. Why don't you call my name? But what ended up happening on that night, hell, you can kiss my ass, stuns Vince. And then it builds for a bit because Vince is still on commentary. They do the screw job. They do all this. And then Mike Tyson's there. Vince is doing this. Iron Mike Tyson. Ha ha ha. He comes out. Austin and him go face to face. You ruined it. You ruined it, damn it. And Austin just doing this in his face. And then Shawn is the champion. We go back to One Night Only, 97. Yeah, I'm jumping around a little bit. He becomes a European champion. He then wins the championship in Montreal. Suffers a debilitating back injury, which I'm not saying he wasn't injured. I just don't think it was debilitating, but whatever. I'm sure he was hurt. He also needed to go to fucking rehab, but he said no for a few years until he traded his drug addiction for religious addiction. But he put over Austin at Mania 14. Tyson knocked out Michaels. They put the shirt over him. The Stone Cold, the Austin era had begun. Stone Cold's journey has been culminated with WWF Gold. Yes, I can say WWF. So I'm wearing a sweet shirt. My sister painted this logo. I'm grateful for this shirt. It's great. It's also a good shirt choice. Whole point is, they're off to the races. Races. That's what I meant. They're off to that. We're not airing out our grievances here. And WCW is still cooking. They're still doing stuff. But now we got the corporate merger thing going on. We got all this. We got Vince putting over, having Austin go over. And then Austin, for a couple weeks, can't be the corporate champion. Knocks him in the balls. Does this. Beats him up. And then April 13th, 1998. Will I fight Stone Cold Steve Austin in this very ring tonight? Oh, hell yeah. On that night, for the first time in 83 weeks, WWF beats WCW. WCW, I believe, would beat them the next week. And they would trade ratings victories for a number of months. In part because of Goldberg, in part because of others going on. But Vince McMahon is basically the king of the castle at this point because he's found a way to turn a corner by listening to his fucking talents and also blind fucking luck because WCW shot themselves in the fucking foot more than Plexico fucking Burris. Anybody that remembers that, I'm fucking astonished. Now, what happens next is just astonishing though, because they have Austin as a champion and he loses at Bad Blood. Vince does the thing where, Cactus, thank you very much for everything you've done. The Hell in a Cell thing with Mankind and Taker. Thank you so much for everything you've done. I never want to see anything like that again. And then Vince's character continues to grow, and so his ego continues to grow. And you can kind of see it if you go back to all this stuff with how he's treated talent. But back at that point, he was 52, 53. He was still in pretty good shape. Mentally, at least. Then we get a little bit later, and then it gets ridiculous. But the Austin Vince feud continued. It kept going. We go to where Austin gets screwed over. Vince has The Rock as the corporate champion. Now we're building Rock because Rock had been around since Survivor Series 96. Got booed out of the Garden. Suffered a knee injury in May of 97. Came back as a Nation of Domination Rock. Even though he's Rocky Maivia. And now they're building to Austin versus Rock at Mania 15. And that would be a big turning point. 98 was also the point, and I'm going to finish this up in another video in part 5. But 98 was pivotal because they were finally able to turn the tide because WCW fucking self-destructed. They got to where the egos were so large and all this stuff and everything. And even though WWE programming in 98 had its dodgy issues, thank you, Vince fucking Russo, there were good things going on. And Vince McMahon, for better or worse, he was going to win this. He was going to win this. But that doesn't mean it's all rosy, and that doesn't mean that I won't be saying shit about Vince in part 5. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this particular show in the comments, please. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm Jonathan. I'll see you soon.